that to, when I say putting the house in order, that's part of the relationship with the commission, but it's also at some point to go back and look at the charter, look at where the document's weak. We're much more business friendly now. We're operating much more effectively than we've seen in the past, I think. And when you consider that this year we were able to roll back the millage rate, our average commission meetings now run about an hour. People are working together for the benefit of the whole community to make sure that it's more efficient and effective. I think we've come a long way in 5 years, but you realize that there's still more work to do. And I often share with people that it was hard to get the local government and the commission to focus on big picture issues when there was a time when we'd spend an hour arguing over whether to buy a two-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive truck. Now we're going through our first master planning process to include the entire city. South Augusta's in that. I think in the next 4 years, it's really going to be focusing on implementing that plan, which we will roll out. Augusta's Sustainable Master Plan will be completed and rolled out on October 14th. There have been public meetings going on for a year and a half now, so we've strived to get input of the man on the street. There have been lots of opportunities for people to give that input, and I firmly believe that it's better to plan with people than for them. We're starting to do that as a city now. We've done that with the Laney Walker Bethlehem redevelopment initiative, but it's always best to get the input from the city. Well, it's just to continue to see the city develop and redevelop. We've got situations where we have strategically invested in some of our lower income neighborhoods, but I want to see those plans through to fruition. Now that we have a master plan that's about to be in place, one of the jobs that I see the mayor having is being the lead salesman for the city, to go out and recruit new businesses, bring in investment dollars, along with helping our local businesses to grow and expand. When you have a plan in place, that makes my job with doing that much easier. And when you consider Augusta's economy has stayed much more stable than most cities throughout this recent recession, we're so well positioned when the national economy does turn, and it will, to take advantage of that. And I share with people, by definition, we're an international city. We're an internationally known brand name of a city for being the home of James Brown and the Masters. You can go any place in the world and mention the name of Augusta, and people know it. So one of the things I'm doing as well, I'm on the International Policy Committee for the State Chamber of Commerce. I'm trying to recruit foreign investment into Georgia, but into Augusta as well. I think we can do a great job of that, but really I want to see Augusta become a thriving, mid-sized international city, and I believe we can get there based on the assets we already have. But that's the thing, and I always keep at the forefront of my mind. I serve 200,000 people, some of whom didn't vote for me, some of whom didn't vote at all, but all whose needs should be addressed equally. And we are a beautifully culturally diverse city. I was making mention that I was at India Day last weekend. This weekend is the Hispanic and the Greek Festival. So I think that diversity is really the strength of a city.
But we just see on festivals, not in the participation. Like you mentioned, for example, your dream is to have some,
Absolutely.
From other ethnicities on the commission or something. But
and I made mention that I hope that in my lifetime I'll see a Latino commissioner, an Asian commissioner, that we could get to a point where the local government really reflected the face of the community. And I think that will happen. I think that we will get there. People are going to say what they are, but I don't call a press conference for everything I do on a daily basis. Yes, am I positive when I do interviews? Do I promote the city? Absolutely. I don't think you can lead a city forward by being negative, by continually underscoring the issues facing the city. With regards to crime, the sheriff will tell you I'm one of the strongest supporters of law enforcement. He's a separately elected constitutional officer. He is head of law enforcement for the city. I'm here to help him with whatever he needs. He knows that. If you ask any deputy on the street, they will let you know that as well. Augusta Inc., the big gun bust that we had a couple years ago, that was an example. The sheriff came to me and the administrator and said, this is what I need. We gave it to him immediately. So just because I'm positive in public does not mean that there's not strength of character there and a commitment to helping with all of these issues throughout the city.
Transportation. Last Saturday I attended a public meeting with the Augusta Bus Rider Association, and one of the leaders said that you were invited and you wasn't there at the meeting. So is that showing some insensitivity from your part, or is just that you have conflict of?
No, I just had a conflict, but that day I was at a candidates forum at 9 o'clock that morning. We had the grand opening of the Miracle Field for the YMCA. We also had the Light the Night walk later on in the day, so I had, and then India Day as well. That was just a conflict. But let me just say, with transit, we are studying that issue. We've recently completed a report that's given us recommendations how to operate transit more effectively. We need to get out of the mindset. So many people feel like transit is just there for people who can't afford a car. Well, my generation, when I lived in Atlanta, I took MARTA into work every day. If you've got a good functioning public transportation system, my generation will use it. That's the conversation we need to be having in recruiting new businesses to Augusta. Automatic data processing and T-Mobile. One brought 1,000 jobs, the other brought 800 jobs, but in the course of conversation when we were recruiting them, both asked about our public transportation system. So that's the way we need to look at it. And I'll go even further than that. One of the things I've been working on for the past several years at the state level is the rail issue, passenger rail. And one of the points that I've made is with development pressures in Atlanta, if you could have people commute from Augusta or Macon into Atlanta or Columbus, it would take some of the development pressures off of that city. Well, now finally, the Georgia Department of Transportation applied for a federal grant to study what they're calling the Capital to the Coastline Loop, which would go from Atlanta to Athens to Augusta to Savannah to Macon and back to Atlanta. I believe it's 3/4 of the state's population live within that geographic area. It makes sense, but that's something that I've been sharing with people. We need to go even further than buses, and we need to address the rail issue.
So,
well, some of these things and what people need to realize, it's like with high-speed rail. That's an issue that I'm working on now. Is that going to happen during my administration? Probably not, because these things take years to develop. North Carolina is a good example. They're 10 years ahead of us in their rail efforts. But the same thing with transit here. I think now we do have a group of commissioners that are willing to work together. You don't see all the discord and the debate. Obviously, we don't agree on everything, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. Those type situations, to have an operating, effective, and functioning government like that, allows us to address the big picture issues. We've seen that with the Judicial Center. That was a project that was stalled before I took office. The library, the Trade and Exhibit Center, we're now beginning to bring forward these big picture projects, and we can do the same thing with transit or anything else within the government for that matter.
So it's not just the budget problem, it's more like a logistic problem?
Well, it's budget too, and as I made mention, we've been able to go the past 3 years in the worst recession in my lifetime without increasing the millage rate, and actually we're able to roll it back a little bit this year. But it's with anything within the city government with budgeting, it's assessing the needs, and it's really balancing the scarcity.
What about privatization of the bus system?
That's another thing that I would be more than willing to explore. So there are other cities that are doing transit better than we are. Most of them, I will say, have a dedicated funding source. MARTA in Atlanta has a dedicated funding source. I think we need to be looking at something like that here, because in general, transit systems nationally they don't make money. They provide a service to the citizen, but other places that are doing it better than we are, I'd be willing to implement their forms here.